Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give people a chance to come on in. Welcome, welcome. All right, so we're going to give people a few more seconds to come in, and then we will get started. We're so happy to have everyone with us again for another wonderful session of this wonderful Northeast Organic Seed Conference. I hope everyone is enjoying the conference and getting a lot of great information. I know I am, and so it's been a great honor and privilege to work with everyone. So as I mentioned before, welcome, welcome. If this is your first workshop, welcome. If you are coming back, welcome back. And we are so happy to have you with us today. You are joining us for the 2 o'clock session, which is Pushing Boundaries, which is one that I'm really excited about. I will be moderated today by Nate Kleinman. This is part of the 2021 Northeast Organic Seed Conference, and I want to let everyone know that this session is being recorded. The NOFA New York Winter Conference and the Northeast Organic Seed Conference join together every 2 years, and you are participating in the third collaboration, which is wonderful. And please, please enjoy as many workshops as you possibly can in both the NOFA New York Winter Conference and the Seed Conference. My name is Anna Muhammad, and I work and garden and live in Springfield, Massachusetts. I work for NOFA, Massachusetts. I've said this so much now, I'm getting it mixed up a little bit, but I work for NOFA Mass, the sister organization right next door. I will be assisting with the Zoom tech hosting for this session. In another time, if it wasn't for COVID, we would have traveled, come together, been in hotels or convention centers, shook hands, hugged, met new folks. But in this wonderful age of Zoom and being online, we can recreate that same wonderful feeling of community. And we're gonna try and do that right here with your help. And so we're so looking forward to it. And I'm going to share my screen real quick. So for those who were trying to figure out, is this the right workshop? You are in the right place. Our next slide gives a brief explanation of our conference community agreements. You do have this in your socio program book. It's here on the screen. We're not going to go over every point. I just encourage you to keep referring to it because these are the agreements that everyone has been abiding by. It's made the conference a wonderful experience for everyone. But just a few things very quickly: be respectful. Respect the identities, backgrounds, and boundaries of others. We want to be open to different perspectives and experiences. Each person decides how they show up and what they share. We are in a virtual world, so we want to ask one mic, so one voice at a time. You may be asked at a certain point to come off of mute to ask a question. And so all that we ask is you come off mute, ask your question, put yourself back on mute so that we can give everyone an opportunity to get involved when it's time for that. And then lastly, just as a really big point, like I mentioned, we are in the virtual world. Technology sometimes is not our friend. It may not always cooperate. So we do ask for your continued patience with us as we are working with this. And this is the first time I believe that both of these conferences have been offered online. So we do ask for your continued patience as we work through our virtual platform here. In terms of our land acknowledgement, we want to acknowledge that we are on land that was inhabited by our First Nations family before European colonization. And if you're trying to figure out which land or which tribe that the land that you on belongs to, you can use this particular link that we have here, and I'll put it again in the chat to help you locate your area, and you can find what nation was there. I am broadcasting from Pecumtuck land in Springfield, and so this will help you identify where you're coming from. I like to take at this moment a few seconds of silence to pay homage and respect to our Indigenous family. It could be a moment of prayer, mindfulness, but just a few seconds of silence in honor of our First Nations family. Thank you for joining me in that. We definitely want to continue paying homage to each other, but particularly for those who have owned the land before. We want to give a big shout out to In Living Color. They have set up the virtual BIPOC space. And for those who may not know, BIPOC is Black, Indigenous People of Color. This is a space that was set up for that. If you have not gotten a chance to visit, please visit. They do have open hours from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. They had a wonderful opening ceremony on Saturday, January 16th, to start the conference, and they will have a closing ceremony on Saturday, January 23rd at 1. And they are on call this weekend. We are so grateful to the facilitators, Amanda David and Mandana Bushi, for providing that service from In Living Color. The keynote speakers have been wonderful. You don't want to miss tonight's keynote speaker, Banu. That will take place tonight at 6 p.m. You can get the link in your program book. Laura Lignick, who opened our workshop, our conference on the 16th, was tremendous. I do believe the recording is available, as are all of the recordings are up in the socio program book from the past days. And then we have our keynote that will close us out on the 23rd, Ryan Caldwell. Please, you don't want to miss these keynotes, but particularly tonight, you definitely want to catch that one. UVM note takers and a community map. The University of Vermont will have note takers in all the sessions. There should be 2 note takers in this session. And if they are present, I'd like if they could identify themselves in the chat. As part of a needs assessment, notes will center on current and future priorities, opportunities, and challenges. Please know, no personal or identifiable information will be included in this. This information will be compiled into a narrative in the coming months, which will be open to the public for comments and feedback from the Northeast Seed community. Really important to get your feedback, and it will be part of the needs assessment. Now, speaking of the needs assessment, we will be having a needs assessment day, Sunday, January 24th. It will be all day. And as you can see the schedule to your right here on the screen, those are all the sessions that are taking place. We're asking that you join us for a day dedicated to supporting the Northeast Organic Seed System and all its diverse participants in collaboration with conference planners and the University of Vermont. The needs assessment will help identify strengths and challenges, and we'll brainstorm on steps that will help build resilience in the region. We will put the link in the chat because it is a separate link from the conference. It is a free event, and we do encourage people to attend. It will be led and moderated by Jackie Pilati and Hannah Tragus, so I really encourage folks to attend this. Also, I mentioned there are some free events that will be included in that link. We do know that there are many people who could not afford to attend conferences, and we are hoping that we have had some folks that benefited from the OREI grant supported scholarships. And the SEED conference and our UVM collaborators came together to offer that. We are so happy, in addition, to have some of those free workshops offered. And again, reference the link that will be in the chat so you can get registered for the free events and some of the meetups, I believe, and this needs assessment. And then we'll also have a link in there for the survey. So without any more from myself, I do not want to delay. I turn things over now to Nate, who will take us further into this workshop. Nate, it is all yours at this point.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thanks for all the amazing work you're doing on this conference. So we've got 6 speakers today, including myself. They're each going to introduce themselves. We ask that you turn your video off at this point to preserve the bandwidth. There'll be time for questions at the end. And yeah, this is going to be a really exciting conference. Also, please keep your mics off. You can feel free to put questions in the chat during the talks. Each presenter is going to speak for about 10 minutes, and then and then we'll have some time at the end for questions. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Jackie Pilati, who had the idea for this panel. Jackie, all yours.
So much responsibility. Wow. I'm gonna just start sharing my screen now. So yeah, as Nate mentioned, the idea for this came from some work that I had been doing at home, trying to grow things that were meaningful to me. Foods that fed my ancestors, and things that are native to the Caribbean, or, well, grown in the Caribbean traditionally. So just to back it up a little bit, my name is Jacqueline Pilati. Some of you have been in sessions with me before, so I won't go too much into it. But basically, I wanted to change a lot of the food injustices that I saw in my neighborhood, and so this seed library work and this project is kind of like what I did to try to address that. So I live in Queens in New York City, and I had mentioned before in a previous session that there are over 135 languages spoken in the borough of Queens, and we're all folks in diaspora, right? We're all people that are displaced in one way or another, and we all have these foods that connect us to places and to people. And so I'm going to talk today about one of these foods, and they are gandules. So, this is a plant that I come to know through my Puerto Rican ancestry. And it's something that we eat these beans a lot, and they're an important part of how we celebrate Christmas, because it comes into harvest around that time in Puerto Rico. And the I'm going to kind of walk through a little bit of the history of how this came to the Caribbean. And so, enslaved peoples that came across the Middle Passage are often portrayed as like the muscle of European ingenuity, but really they were brilliant in how they were domesticating crops, and growing things, and working in subsistence plots to feed themselves. And so this is a crop that came over, and it was used in subsistence fields in sugar islands like Puerto Rico, and it was used for feed for animal fodder, and it was also used as a boundary marker on different plots. And so it was important because, as a legume, it is nitrogen fixing. And so the land that was given to enslaved peoples to work in the subsistence plots, we know was like the worst land, right? And so this was a crop that was really an important food crop, but again, really was key in like reinvigorating those soils. And so this came over along with breadfruit, which I know is pana, and these are both, things that were brought over specifically to feed and keep enslaved peoples alive during that journey in the Middle Passage, purely for economic reasons, right? It was important to have these people be alive by the time that you got to a port, and so these were some of the foods that fed them. So you can see, well, I'll just back up a little bit. So, you can see some of the details there. Traditionally, this is a plant that grows as a perennial, like shrub or bush. And it can get kind of tall, about 12 feet. Um, Here in New York, the plant requires long nights before it's going to set flowers and set fruits. And I'll kind of walk you through some of my failures in trying to grow this successfully here. So we'll kind of look at the life cycle a bit. So on the left, there are some gandule seeds. And these photos, the next photos and the next couple slides come from my seed sister and friend Lex, who did a lot of work with gandules and just growing them and seeing them while she was farming in Puerto Rico. And so on the right hand side there, you can see what they look like. They do require a high soil temp to germinate, about 60 degrees. So here I do that on heat mats. And this is what they look like when they're flowering. Again, this is in Puerto Rico. You can kind of get a sense of its like bushy habit. And the flowers range from having these yellow, yellow with red striping to like this fuchsia red color. They're just really beautiful. And so the pods, the fruit, can range from being just green to again having this striping on it here. And I'm just trying to also, yes, they are beautiful. They are gorgeous. Um, so you can see on the left some of those fruit pods, and they kind of have these really, I mean, I really get a kick out of them, how they kind of have, these indentations and beautiful shape to them. And so these are the different varieties. There's a photo here that I was trying to find, but it was a photo of a bunch of shelled fresh gandules that my mom had sent me that kind of look like those bright, like pinkish fuchsia looking ones, coral. I don't know what you would call that, but and that upper middle photo. And then at the bottom there's some speckled ones, which these are ones that Lex had met in Puerto Rico. I've never seen these personally, but they're beautiful. And on the right, you can see like these beautifully, beet colored like jewels. And there are also some black ones in there. So lots of really nice, um, beautiful diversity and expression there. Oh no, what happened here? Well, I don't know what happened to the middle part of that, but I'll tell you how kind of the foray into my failure in trying to grow these. So initially, I had my cousin send me some seed from Puerto Rico. And I grew these, and I have a picture I'll show you in a bit of what they look like. And so I grew them in some pretty large containers, and they, lots of biomass, but they never set flowers. And so, that was kind of like a failure. And that the end of that growing season, actually, I went to a excuse me, a NOFA, I think it was a summer conference in August up in Massachusetts. And I attended a seed intensive with Rowan White. And at the end of Rowan's intensive, they had a seed, swap. And I met Jeremy Temperman, who's the farm manager of East New York Farms. And Jeremy was like, he announced to a group like, hey, I have these pigeon peas that we grew in Brooklyn this past season. And so the photo there on the right are some of those that Jeremy had shared with me that day. And surprise to no one, but I freaked out when I saw this. And I was, so happy that there was someone who had these like northern adapted pigeon peas. And that is credited to the work of the person that you see on the screen there, Dr. Sharad Patak. So what's missing in that middle box was some of the things that he was interested in working with pigeon peas while he was at the University of Georgia. He's since now passed. I found out that he passed away in February of last year. So he was interested in drought stress. He was interested in protein, starch, and digestible fiber content in the pigeon peas. And he was also interested in like their response to photoperiods. So getting them adapted to more northern climates so that they would flower and obviously produce a crop by the end of the growing season. Oh, there we go. So there's two varieties somehow, and if you happen to know more about the story, please reach out and let me know. But two varieties of these that came out of Dr. Patak's work found its way to Muhammad Feroz of Cornell, which somehow found its way to East New York Farms in Brooklyn. And these are some of the varieties. I'll quickly just say that by no means whatsoever, if you have access to an academic journal and can like find more of his research, please don't download it and send it to me. That wouldn't be a good idea. So these are what some of the northern adapted varieties look like. The left are ones that East New York Farms grows for TrueLove Seeds catalog for Owen Taylor and team. And so the ones on the left, I think, are ones that Owen has grown in Philly. The ones on the right are ones that I grew a couple years ago. And then I'll just end it here. You can kind of see the arc of the boundary pushing here. So on the very left, you can see those are the seed, those are the plants that grew from the ones that came directly from Puerto Rico from my cousin. And you can see there's, nice and tall and pretty looking, but no flowers. And then the ones that grew from the seeds that I got from Jeremy, much more compact in its habit, kind of, dwarfy looking, but definitely lots of beautiful flowers. And on the right, you can see the fruit. And so, yeah, I'm interested in doing more work around this specific crop for, all the reasons. It, super high in protein. Also, it's very high drought tolerance. And so thinking about things that work in the face of like intersection of culture and climate resilience, please reach out.
Awesome, Jackie. Thank you so much. That's beautiful. Well, good segue to a colleague of Owen Taylor's, Julia Aguilar. Julia, you're up.
Cool. Thanks, Nate. Hey, everyone. Yeah, just gonna introduce myself. My name is Julia Aguilar. I'm a staff member at TrueLove Seeds on our farm team, and also involved in seed inventory management and order fulfillment. I'd like to also give a land acknowledgement of where I'm at. I'm coming to you from Pashtagunk or Pashyunk in South Philadelphia, between Lenape, Wihituk, the Delaware River, and Tolpehawking, the Schuylkill River, which is within Lenape-Hawking traditional mid-Atlantic territories of the Lenni Lenape. So I guess we're part of the Northeast here in NOFA conference, but definitely mid-Atlantic based. And I was born and raised here in Philadelphia. So a couple of you might be familiar with us at TrueLove from other workshops, but I just thought I'd give a little rundown of how we work. TrueLove Seeds is a farm-based seed company offering open pollinated and culturally important vegetable, herb, and flower seeds. Our seeds are grown by over 50 small-scale urban and rural farmers committed to community food sovereignty, cultural preservation, and sustainable agriculture. Each of our seed stewards contributes at least one culturally important variety to our catalog that tells a story of their ancestry, their community, or their growing region. We use a profit sharing model, which is something I'd like to highlight for this Pushing Boundaries session. So 50% of each of our seed packet sales goes back to the farmer who grew it. In these first years that our company has been starting out, sometimes that's only a few $100s, but that can make a big difference for a small farm, especially for so many folks that we work with who are LGBTQ and Black and Brown folks. Extra money for the farm project every year doesn't hurt. And graciously, we are only growing larger. So hopefully those checks will be larger to our farmers as well. We prioritize partnering with farmers who create community-based solutions to the inadequacies and injustices of the globalized food system. and with growers who use natural farming practices. So yeah, my slide, here we go. At our farm just outside of Philadelphia, pretty much everybody on staff, including our annual cohort of apprentices, sort of chooses a crop or several crops that are connected to our personal ancestry to tend as part of our work. And my focus has largely been on Andean crops. My dad immigrated here to the US from the highlands of Ecuador in the 1950s. And as a first generation USian, my work at TrueLove is one way for me to connect with my Andean heritage. So a couple of my favorite Andean crops that we're trialing for seed are cedron, or lemon verbena, which is a native perennial woody shrub herb to the Andes. Ecuadorian pinstripe peanuts, which are exactly as cute as they sound, and chochos, which are a type of lupini bean native to the Andes, which is the plant that is highlighted here in the photos. So I decided to try to grow chochos in the mid-Atlantic, kind of just to see if we could. And also because they are like a very key component of a lot of our national Ecuadorian dishes, like ceviche, and also fanesca, which is our celebratory soup that we eat for Easter to celebrate the end of Lent. I never really grew up eating them. Actually, to this day, I have not tasted them and didn't think about that until just now. They were not, available in Philadelphia grocery stores when I was growing up. You can probably get them in specialty stores, but they are a high altitude lupine from an arid mountainous climate. So it has been a little bit of a challenge to try them out here in the Delaware River Valley, which is a very moist sea level place. Our first trial crop, we got seed from the USDA and planted out in our field in 2019. Similar to how Jackie was phrasing about failures, I feel very comfortable to share that it did absolutely horribly. The crop only lasted a few weeks. It died really swiftly. I think that's because we were lovingly, dutifully, completely over watering them, just drowning them in water because we didn't know any better. In 2020, we sourced seeds for these chochos from like an Ecuadorian imports food company, just like some dried beans. We planted them. This time we chose to grow them inside of our hoop house so that we could have them in like more controlled setting. And I decided we should barely water them at all. And what we actually ended up with, which you can see in these pictures, was that we got several flowering plants. They didn't make it much past that, which was a super bummer. They got taken out by spider mites. It happens. But even so, it was a really big deal for us to get them as far as, the next step of having them bloom. So this year I'm really hoping we can learn from these past couple years and get these chochos even closer to actualizing a seed crop. We're potentially getting gifted some chochos that were grown out successfully in the Pacific Northwest of the US, which will probably be like a better adaptation starting point for us. And Yeah, in terms of cultural relevance, the Northeast, not as much Philadelphia, but definitely New York City, especially Queens, where Jackie lives, New York State, Jersey. These are the densest and highest areas for Ecuadorian immigrant communities in the US. So it would be really cool to have this crop become adapted to this climate region. And I'm personally really excited about it. It's been a really great learning opportunity for me as a grower. Yes. And I think I would just like to close out with a couple lines to emphasize, our mission at TrueLove, which is that we preserve culture through keeping seeds and their stories. We connect humanity through the seeds of plants that have nourished us. Keeping seeds is an act of true love for our ancestors and for our collective future. Thank you. Sorry.
All good. Thank you, Julia. That's awesome. Yeah, and I'll say it's an honor to be one of the growers and collaborators with TrueLove. I love the work that you all are doing, and really exciting to see that project. I know you'll get it. Diligence. It just requires diligence. So, all right, it's my turn next. So I'm going to share my screen and figure out how to do this. Here we go. And does that look good? Somebody give me a thumbs up or chime in.
Yep, looks great.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right, so my name is Nate Kleinman. I use he, him pronouns. I am here also in Lenapehoking, the traditional lands of the Lenape people, also the Nanticoke people. This is, I'm in southern New Jersey, which is, technically the Northeast, but we have a NOFA here in New Jersey, but we are, I'm in zone 7 in the really farthest south portion of the state. So I co-founded the Experimental Farm Network in 2013, and we mostly work to facilitate collaboration on plant breeding projects and sustainable ag research. We are sort of all about pushing boundaries, and I'm going to kind of play on that theme in a variety of ways with what I show you here. I had trouble. I had originally thought I would focus on 1 or 2 things, but I decided I'm just going to show you a whole bunch of things and kind of riff on the theme of pushing boundaries in general. And I'm going to make sure I'm timing myself so I don't go too far over. So EFN also, we're a cooperative, and we also have a profit sharing model like TrueLove. We have about 35 growers this year, which is the most we've ever had. And we're selling over 300 varieties at our catalog, efnseeds.com. One of the ones I wanted to highlight here is Njama Jama, which is nightshade. Solanum scabrum is the Latin name. And this was sort of a late addition to the catalog, but it ended up being front and center because it's so cool and we're so excited about it. I got this, and this I think it fits into this theme of pushing boundaries because actually Jackie gave me the idea to talk about how our model works. We have a lot of different growers who produce seed for us, and in many cases we don't meet the plants ourselves before we put it in the catalog, but we trust our growers and we trust that they're growing quality seed and it's something interesting. So this is one that is from someone who's never grown seed before. In fact, she worked for the State Department for years. Her name's Ergibe Boyd. She's down in Maryland, And she retired from the State Department. She's an Eritrean immigrant. And this is a portion of her farm where she's growing the njama jama, which is a leaf crop. It's a nightshade that is grown for the leaves. It's a staple crop, and particularly in West Africa. And Ergibay knew that there were tons of people who didn't have a way to access this beloved food. So she started growing it. She got seeds from a variety of different sources. And so her patch there, which again, she's just growing for leaves, has a huge amount of diversity in it, different leaf forms, different berry forms. I went looking through it and found most of them are black like this, but I found a few that ripen looking like this, and even one that was pretty much just green when fully ripe. Of course, I saved the seeds from that one, and perhaps that will be we'll be able to turn that into a unique variety. But you know, a lot of what we like to do at EFN is get things that grow on the extremes of the natural range of a plant, and that enables them to grow. And typically, we're looking for things that grow that we're at the northern edge of where they grow. This is our friend Joe Kiefer's house. Growing next to his house is this sable minor. That's a dwarf palmetto palm. That species grows along the East Coast, typically up to about North Carolina or so. But there's one population in Oklahoma, and Joe got these seeds at some point and started growing this Oklahoma accession at his house. And sure enough, these are palmettos that are thriving in New Jersey. We're planning to add that to the catalog later this year. Actually, he got a whole bunch of seeds from it. Another plant that is native to here, but we are at its natural, the northern part of its natural range, is the Maypop passion fruit. Actually, TrueLove also sells this, and this is the fruit. It's really delicious. It's a wonderful plant, and we figure by selling the seeds for the northernmost examples of the species that we might be able to get ones that we might, by having people grow them all over the place, we may find ones that grow even farther north. Here's a plant that this is called creeping cucumber, or Melothria pendula. It's closely related to Melothria scabra, the sour gherkin, which is typically an annual plant. This is a perennial. It's also called Guadalupe cucumber. It's native to the Caribbean and the Southeast, but it's been creeping up north, and this one comes from a population in southern Delaware, which was discovered in the mid-2000s and is the farthest north known natural population of it that probably was planted by a bird. But I went and got those seeds. We now offer these seeds, and people are growing them all over the place and identifying ones with slightly bigger fruit or ones that are hardy. The root is actually edible for this species as well. We're doing the same with this, which is Yaupon holly. That's a holly that has caffeine in it. It's the northernmost caffeinated, naturally caffeinated plant. You can think of it like yerba mate, but it grows in the Southeast, and this is from a population in Virginia. We get a lot of seeds from the USDA, from the government gene banks. This is an African horned melon that had been grown in the Netherlands for a while, so it was already northern adapted when we got it. We had been unable to grow a jelly melon like this until we got these seeds. I really like moringa. I took these pictures because of the wasps, but moringa, this is the first time I had a moringa plant bloom, and it's because I grew a whole bunch of seeds, and this one, which someone had given me, which originated in Ghana, actually worked. It actually made some flowers. Haven't figured out how to get pods or seeds from it yet, but hopefully it's only a matter of time. I have that plant actually in the corner of this room sitting dormant. And then another plant that I was pretty excited about this past year is the Sea Island indigo. There's a long and pretty heavy story about this plant. It was introduced in the 1700s, and it was grown by enslaved African people along the Sea Islands of Georgia and South Carolina. It was only grown for a few decades before the Revolutionary War got rid of the supply chains, and the British colonial officer whose family was growing this had no more market for it. But there was a wild population that was found in the last 10 years still growing on Ossabaw Island off the coast of Georgia. And I got seeds for this. I thought, okay, I'm going to try to grow this. It's probably not going to work in New Jersey. But sure enough, by June, it was flowering, and I had seed pods soon after that. So we were really excited about this plant. Growing things like this yam. This is from Hawaii. I got one air potato from this last year, and sure enough, it produced a few more this year. I don't know if this is going to be a functional plant, but it's been fun to push this boundary and see if I can grow it. This is a plant called Kitli from Liberia. It's an eggplant relative. I tried for years to get this to grow. I had literally one seedling the past 2 years. Last year's seedling was in terrible shape and did nothing. This year's seedling matured into a plant. Thankfully, it's a self-pollinator, and I ended up with some fruit. This is another plant I've been growing for years, but this is the first year we had enough to actually sell a few seeds, and they're already sold out. They sold out in less than a day. It's this Guatemalan green-fleshed squash. It looks like a butternut on the outside, but the flesh inside is green. That is not a rotten squash. That is what it looks like. This is what it looks like when you roast it, and that's what it looks like on a fork. We've grown a lot of plants that are desert adapted with quite a bit of success in New Jersey, including this watermelon from Homs in Syria. This is a pepper from Aleppo, Syria, and this is a tomato from Homs, also in Syria. And I'm just going to, I don't have the time to go into detail about this, but one of the other things that I think is important to mention when you're pushing boundaries like this and growing crops that are somebody else's cultural heritage, there's a responsibility to treat those with respect. And one of the things we talked a lot about in a couple of the other panels that I've done this week is rematriation, returning seeds to the people with whom they belong. And this is a refugee camp in Lebanon, where we were introduced to someone who was an aid worker who found out that we had these seeds, wanted to get them to the refugees living there. And actually that person is not a refugee, but works at the camp. And we were told actually that they really loved, in particular, this Homs tomato, which many of them were from Homs, and they didn't have the seeds for that anymore. So they really appreciated that. A couple more examples, and then I'm going to wrap it up. I'm about my time here. This is a monkey puzzle tree. It's from Chile. It's a really amazing plant that can live for 1,000 years, gets 100 feet tall, produces seeds that look like this. They're pine nuts, essentially, with a really amazing flavor. I was just snacking on a couple the other day, and well, that's my time. I'm going to wrap it up. And they grow pretty well in the Pacific Northwest because that climate is more similar to where they grow in Chile. But they do grow in this part of the country. This one is in North Jersey, and this one is actually in front of Longwood Gardens outside of Philadelphia. And so I sprouted a bunch of them, and I planted many of them when they were too young in the field. They were too tender, and other animals were able to just rip them up. But I planted one that was a couple years old, and it's thriving. I have that broken pallet there to preserve it. The last thing I'm going to tell you about real quick is probably my favorite crop, which is sorghum. Sorghum's a staple grain in Africa. It can be used for a range of things. It pops like popcorn. You can press the stalks and get green juice that can be boiled down to a delicious molasses. There's a huge amount of diversity in sorghum, and the project that we're trying to do is real boundary pushing, which is developing a perennial sorghum from annual sorghums. We started with something that the government actually has in their collection, but we got it from our friends at Adaptive Seeds. It was developed by Tim Peters, and it's a cross between wild Johnson grass, which is this plant, and annual sorghum that looks like this. This is what the perennial looks like now. It's perennial again in the Pacific Northwest. It thrives up there where they have mild winters. When we grew it in New Jersey, we had one plant survive one winter. But that was enough to start a breeding project. And this was that plant. It produced a whole bunch of seed heads. And this past winter, 2 winters ago, from many seeds planted from that, we had 4 plants survive the winter. So we feel like we're well on our way. It's going to take a while, but we'll get there. So if anybody wants to stay in touch, there's my contact information. And thank you all very much. All right, Namai, you are up. I'm going to unshare my screen. And yeah, thanks for listening. Happy to answer some questions later.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, everyone. Hi, everyone. Is the sound good?
Yeah,
Nate?
sounds good.
Yeah, good. So we, my wife and I, we run a farm called Gopal Farm in in the Hudson Valley. It's in New Paltz, about 1.5 hours north of New York City. We grow heirloom Indian seeds. We collect seeds from India, and we have been growing for the last 4 years now and trialing them. And then we have a whole, we trial them with the chefs, and also we grow for the Indian American community. We have an Indian farm box. We have a predominantly Indian Americans in it, and we deliver them all over New York area. We just started developing this farm in Cape Cod. That's where we'll do the same thing for the Boston community. I wanted to share a presentation which will go for 3 minutes. It's an automatic thing with music. It shows all the different vegetables that we are growing out from those seeds. And after that, I have another presentation where I can talk. So just a second. Nate, if you can let me know when you start hearing and seeing, and if there is a problem.
Still can just hear it.
Yeah,
Try to do the share screen, the green button at the bottom.
yeah, I know.
Okay.
Do the desktop.
There you go.
Yeah. You able to see? Nate, are you able to see? Were you able to see?
Yes, we did. We could.
Okay. So 3-4 years back, Chef Dan Barber met us at in another one place, and he said he would be very interested if we do the Indian seeds and Indian vegetables. And so after the tour we were taken on a tour of the stone barns and the Blue Hill. We understood he needed like flavor was most important, history, cultural and usage history, soil, what each vegetable does, like a whole background on all these seeds and vegetables. So we understood it's not possible for because it's not possible for us to purchase the seeds just from any seed company or from somewhere else, because we don't know what the background is or the cultural usages, because India is so varied that I have been used to just from one region. I was not, I don't even know all this vegetables, what they are growing in other parts of the country. And so we decided we would go to India, search for the heirloom seeds. I thought there'll be many companies or many people who will be having these seeds, but unfortunately, it was surprising to us, we couldn't find much. Most of the seeds have been hybridized to such an extent that the flavor has been missing, mostly for appearance, mostly for longevity, production, and appear and all these things, which flavor was lacking. So I knew Chef Dan Barber won't like those vegetables. So we had to research where we can get these seeds. We found some farmers, and then gradually we started finding local farmers or groups, NGOs or non-profits who have been trying to save seeds, but there was no organized effort in the country, by the universities or by the government. So for the first 2, 3, 4, even still, we have had a lot of issues bringing seeds. First, we got these kinds of seeds that we got were some of the, see, initially we started getting seeds from the temperate regions because we thought, oh, here it may be the similar climate. And then someone said, oh, there are so many seeds available. I was in the south of India, which is tropical. Why don't you take some seeds from here? I said, all right, let me try. And of course, a few we got from the arid desert where I grew up from. But we got it from some local farmers. We saw the vegetable markets. Few we got from seed companies just to try out. But we found lots and lots of issues over the years. One was because there is no organized effort in India for the local seeds, heirloom seeds. We found a lot of inconsistent quality. Germination was not happening. Of some different batches, there were issues, diseases, they would grow out. We spent all that money, everything in growing out, and then just all that effort gone down. And sometimes they'll be available, sometimes not. And we didn't have facilities in India, or even now we just starting to develop where we could test them out in India and before bringing it here. But because here when we were trialing them, you know how we grow one bed of one vegetable, so it has to be prepared, and it's so much time effort goes for a couple of months to see if it is coming up till they fruit, till sometimes 3 months, and then they don't. So all that time effort, and it just gone down the drain. So that's why we have started so much trying to work to get the right quality from India. We're trying to get many more farmers to join in, and other things which I'll talk about later. So, but shipping and import was a big issue. Small quantities we can get permit, but for larger quantities, and so many things are not able to get the permit for some good reasons, some bad reasons too. And so shipping was a big issue. Sometimes they would spoil. Some roots that we were getting, turmeric and all, just spoiled. And seeds also, sometimes they were impounded. So it was not very, so we started growing seeds here in New Paltz, which have its own difficulties, but that was a little better but only after we have a good stock developed. So for the cucumbers, like we have developed, but that's another whole issue because now we need a lot of spacing required. Otherwise, they can interpollinate, cross-pollinate, and so a few more we have developed. But we are depending more on India to get the stock quality first, which we can test out, and then put it in, streamline it, and then start saving the seeds here, which is more adaptable to the climate here in the Northeast. So we didn't have much. I was not an ag background, so I didn't know how to grow and what does the climate does, the soil does, micro. Even the farmers whom we are buying the seeds from, sourcing the seeds from, they just know how they grow. They don't know the science behind it many times. They don't know how it would grow in another climate. So we didn't have full guidance. Even I talked to Cornell, where not much guidance at all. Then Rutgers University, our professor had been growing there, but I had only a couple of vegetables and not so much experience. So we had to basically do it on our own, which is the problem with economics, because while growing these seeds, the productivity was a big issue. And sometimes when we streamline the production, but then we get a new batch from India because I didn't have enough quantity, and the CSA we have promised them, so I have to get a larger quantity, and then they just won't grow like how we wanted, because the climate was also changing. 2017 was 2016 was a drought year, and 2017 on 18 was huge, heavy rains, if everyone remembers. And 19 was a little better. No, anyway, I forgot. And 20 had its own issues because our seeds didn't even come from India. Only the seeds which we were here, that's what we could grow. So but a good thing was some of the chefs were very helpful in helping us through the trial phase, especially Chef Dan Barber. I should mention him again, because he was buying everything, whatever we were growing, whether he would use them or not, because he promised me I would buy everything that you trial. So that was a big support, and not only financial but also a lot of moral support. And then when we got to the Union Square, and that's when all the different chefs started using those seeds. And now so many vegetables have been streamlined. A few you saw, the cucumbers and some of the greens, they are very popular. At least they were till 2019. And 20, of course, was a washout in terms of Union Square and the restaurant chefs. But next year there's a lot of interest still, but they also, many chefs like Chef Dan Barber is now out. In a sense, he's not directly cooking, and I don't know how it will be with the other restaurants. Um, so what I love about them, about growing these, is I really feel for it, that this is a cultural and culinary heritage which will be lost. Because in India too, there are mostly people are eating almost the same vegetables we find here in New York. Let's not call New York City, somewhere in upstate, which is totally not Indian or ethnic. In there, if you go in a grocery store, and if you go in an Indian grocery store in a supermarket in India, maybe 20% of the vegetables, 30% are different. And a lot of them are the same. Even zucchini, even I don't know, avocados, everything is coming to India, and people are growing and eating them. So they generally, the interest, or the importance of the local seeds is vanishing in India. On the other hand, here in the US, people who left India, like either first generation, second generation, and third generation, because the parents or grandparents, or they visit India, they want to feel, experience that same culture. So they, here people want it, but in India people don't want it, or they don't know. I mean, they are going toward these other vegetables. So either way, what our thinking has been, that if I can popularize them among the chefs here, and then it is the media is able to pick up some of the stories, and there is some movement. Then many of the Indian media, they are looking towards what America is doing, and if they see, oh, these local vegetables, they are being used, uh, it it will be a huge impact. Whenever I tell people, Dibya is there with me, he's the Indian seed coordinator. He's from Assam, where the ghost pepper is from, the Bhut Jolokia, and he is getting some Jolokia. See, that was his photo that he put. So I tell people that, oh, ghost pepper, the Bhut Jolokia became very popular in the US, and I showed the pepper challenge, on the YouTube. You can see the high school kids doing the ghost pepper challenge.
I gotta interrupt and tell you to wrap it up.
Sure.
Thanks.
So yeah, so people become really excited about it. So Indian Americans also are really happy seeing these vegetables, and they love bringing their children, and the whole cultural aspect is there. All right, I'm done.
All right, Nimai, thank you so much. That's awesome. I look forward to tasting many of these vegetables that I have not tasted before.
In
Um,
August, everything is in bloom there. as
Great.
everyone-
all right, and second to last, we've got Aaron Parker up in Maine. Aaron, you got the floor.
Hi, everyone. It's I honor to be on this panel with all these folks doing really amazing, important work. And I'll try and get my screen sharing going here. Okay, so my name is Aaron Parker, and I'm coming to you from Wabanaki territory. I'm in what is presently referred to as Falmouth, Maine, just north of Portland, and I run Edgewood Nursery, and I'm going to tell you a little about what I do, and then give you one quick seed story, and hopefully not not run overtime. All right. So this is where I live and farm. Here's another view from a forest garden area that produces a lot of the seed and nursery stock that I make a living selling. Here's a couple more views of the potted stock in the nursery on the left, and a view from the house that shows a lot of the sort of annual cultivation areas on the left-hand side and a forest garden on the right. I sell a lot of different products throughout the year. So this time of year, I'm selling seeds, bare root stock, and cuttings and other propagation materials, as well as I've just started selling some value-added products like this Schizandra fruit tincture. And I also do a lot of education, although that's been somewhat curtailed by the pandemic. In the realm of seeds, I would say my biggest focus is perennial vegetables, and here are some of the vegetables that I have done a lot of work with and sell lots and lots of seeds of. And in the upper left-hand corner, we've got Good King Henry. Lower left-hand corner is sea kale. Bottom is Dystania. Bottom right is mouse garlic. Top right is Turkish rocket, and center top is my personal favorite, Hablitzia, and I'll give you a little bit of story about that one at the end of my presentation here. Another focus for me is medicinal herbs, especially ones that are less available other places. So we've got Lycopus lucidus, which has a Chinese name that I can't bring to mind right now. The English common name is rough bugleweed, and Plantago rugelii, or Rugel's plantain, St. John's wort, bottom right, elderberries, and then top center, a plant that I'm really excited about and sell a lot of, is Schisandra chinensis. Another niche that I'm working on are local ecotype native plants. And if you're not, her main focus. And probably the area that I'm most interested in expanding into is the intersection of local ecotype and perennial vegetable success with the common milkweed, the Rugel's plantain or American plantain, pokeweed, and groundnut or Apios americana. And there's a bunch of native plants that are perennial vegetables that I'm, either looking for local ecotype material of or growing out. And some of those that I'm excited about are like hemlock water parsnip, which is a perennial root vegetable with a flavor similar to a parsnip. That's Cium suave, and many, many others. Like Nate with the Experimental Farm Network, I'm often interested in the sort of northernmost populations. And in the area where I live, we're at the very north end populations and also the very south end of a lot of populations, 50 miles or so from the area where the northern temperate forest starts to switch into boreal forest. So there's a lot of plants that I'm interested in working with, or I am already working with, like sassafras, spicebush, that are these wonderful plants that are much more common sort of mid-Atlantic plants, but reach their northern limit, very, very close to here. All right, a little seed story. This is Hablitzia tamnoides. I like the common name Hablitzia for it. The first common name I ever heard for it was Caucasian spinach, and Fedco sells it under the name Caucasian mountain spinach, which is a reference to the home range of this plant, which is the Caucasus Mountains, which are sort of on the border of Eastern Europe and Western Asia. This plant is a spinach relative, but the leaf is a much lighter texture. It sort of has the texture of lettuce, but a kind of a spinachy flavor. It's a clumping herbaceous perennial vine. So every year the crown of the plant generates more and more shoots, and each shoot can turn into potentially as much as 20 feet of vine, and you can have up to maybe 100, 150 shoots from a single plant. So it can be incredibly productive, and very easy to grow in this climate, extremely cold hardy, and produces very, very well in part shade. So really an amazing plant for forest gardening and sort of permaculture systems. I first learned about this plant at a workshop on perennial vegetables with Eric Tonesmeyer in 2009. And he told us about this plant with the caveat that it wasn't something that you could grow because there were no seed sources. So it took me about 2 years to find a source for the plant itself, and then a couple more years to build up seed supply. But by 2012, I had enough seed that I was wholesaling seeds to Fedco Seeds, and I still supply them. And this is my 2013 seed harvest, I believe. And that's a quart jar of pretty clean seed. It needs a little bit more work. But at that time, I'm fairly certain that that was the largest collection of seed of that species on Earth, which was a pretty neat feeling. And since then, this plant has become pretty popular with lots of people, and there might be larger producers out there than me now. But I'm happy to have played a role in this wonderful plant's introduction to our part of the world. So that's basically all I've got. And I think I will wrap it up and hand it over to Sefra.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Sefra Alexandra, and I am speaking to you today from traditional Pagosset territory in an area that was known as Matchamucks, which means the beautiful land. And it certainly is a beautiful area. This is at the Hickory's Farm in Ridgefield, Connecticut. And you can see some of these beautiful native wild plants that I grew up running through meadows in, the Joe Pye weeds and the New York ironweeds. And the initiative that I'll be speaking to you all about in terms of pushing boundaries is helping to amplify the amount of this truly local native seed that is available eco-regionally. So when we talk about pushing boundaries, it's helpful to first set some boundaries. So this map here, if you folks out there haven't seen it before, is a wonderful resource from the EPA. These are eco-regional maps. And what an eco-region is it's taking the data from those who study soils and forestry and ornithology, birds and fish and game, and all of these different disparate sciences. And what they did in a broad stroke, sort of artistic way was made a mosaic of these habitats and these communities along ecological corridors. So those of us wanting to work in the fields of restoration and conservation, we have a framework that we can work together on. If we put our bug eyes on for, our entomological land stewards, the pollinators and all of the insects, they don't see where Connecticut ends and where Massachusetts ends. They see the riparian zones and the broadleaf forest. And so this gives us a really great framework to be talking about creating these native seed sheds, to use Ken Green's term, and really figuring out how we can fortify that on an eco-regional scale. So here where I sit, I'm in eco-region 59. And when I reference ecotypes, what an ecotype simply means is it references that place-based genetics. So if you were to wild collect, which we'll talk about because there's a lot of protocols that go along with that, within ecoregion 59, technically you can proliferate those seeds throughout ecoregion 59 and be sure that you're putting the right plants in the right place. There are different levels of this map, so you can zoom in and see where 59H is, for example, the coastal areas. But as a general framework, this is a great place to start. So I'd like to reference a wonderful report that just came out from two folks. If any of you were on the roundtable we had around fortifying an ecotypic seed network in the Northeast, Ed Toth and Sarah Tangren in October published this great study about those who use native plant materials east of the Mississippi. So just some quick statistics to frame this conversation. They had 760 responses from every state east of the Mississippi, and 74% of people that use native plants, and you can see that bar graph of all the disparate industries really that use this for wildlife habitat, pollinator support, restoration, horticultural purposes, and so on. 74% of them preferred these local ecotypes. 12 to 15%, only 12 to 15% said that they were always available commercially. And 85% of those people who want to buy within a state said that they couldn't. And the closest place that they could source it was 418 miles away. And the next closest was 805 miles away. So as we talk about fortifying these local food sheds, now we're turning that conversation towards native plant materials development. Additionally, 83% said they would be willing to pay a premium for these ecotypic seeds, and 75% said that they only thought the demand for this would rise. So as this is the Northeast Organic Seed Conference, this is seemingly a very viable and important market for seed production. So quickly, I'll go through this process, and we do have a seed school on Friday that will go much more in depth to how this all works. But how do we take these beautiful plants out of the wild landscape and put them into production on farm? So here's the Penstemon digitalis, the beard tongue, and a great host plant to hummingbirds and long-tongued bees. And what we initially reference is this great materials development cycle that we talked a lot about in our roundtable. With native seed collection, there's many protocols that go along with that, making sure you're doing sustainable collection, you have the permission, so on and so forth. And we want to really preserve these living seed banks where they exist. And so there's a lot of caretaking and stewardship that goes along with responsible native seed collection. But then through the evaluation and development, field establishment, seed production, seed storage, and then to the restoration projects, there's a lot of people that have to be involved and a lot of work to be done. To translate that for the Ecotype project, what we've done is created this pathway. So we work with botanists who sustainably collect that wild seed, and then we work with organic farmers to amplify that seed in what's known as founder plots. So 200 plants in a row, and then I and others go through and collect that seed and clean it and stratify it and give that to the nursery men and women, who then make it available for landowners, homeowners, landscapers, and municipalities as the amount of seed we actually have continues to grow. So you can see on the screen some of the species that we've begun working with, and how we choose those species also has a lot of thought behind it. When we think about our local pollinators, they have different feeding times throughout the seasons. And so we need to make sure that we're considering successional bloom times throughout the season. The more diversity of these plants we have on our farm, the more diversity of beneficial insects we'll have, which ultimately for organic farmers increases your yields and local food security. The Ecotype project works predominantly under a USDA specialty crop block grant, where our specialty crop are these ecotypic seeds. And our entire effort initiative is really to help proliferate these through living seed banks, which just means making sure they stay in the soils where they're from, and that others have access to that to reduce fragmentation and help with these wildlife corridors that we are creating together. So here is a great image. The Wild Seed Project is a wonderful resource. Heather McCargo in Maine. She has beautiful illustrations that really help to exemplify, making sure that we're choosing species throughout the season, and that we're looking at the different trophic layers of a forest and making sure that we're providing habitat for all sorts of pollinators. I'm going to go quickly here so we can have time for questions, but so how do we actually work with this? Here is the Eutrochium dubium, the Joe Pye wheat. We see it in beautiful flower all the way to when it goes to seed. And there's different pollinators that will go to this plant throughout the day and throughout the season as it ripens as well. So what we did at the Ecotype project and on our website, which you see down below, is created these free downloadable getting started toolkit. We have these 8x10 old card catalog boxes where we print these out as an effort to provide resources for people that want to get involved with this work. So quickly, we have general growing protocols, general seed saving protocols, and the multi-year overview of protocols, because these are perennials. And so there is a bit of nuance when you're working with these native ecotypic perennials that differs a little bit from other crops you may be cultivating. So for example, the Vernonia, the New York ironweed, this will speak to what type of soils it likes, who their ecological partners are in this, and gives you a good idea of where you could plant this on your farm or on your land. And then, so we have these beautiful plants growing, and then they go to seed. So then what do we do? So we have what the seed looks like, when you can collect it, how deep you should sow it. Basically just the basic information used to make sure that you are collecting these properly and at the right time. We also have these field notes as we're fortifying this Northeast regional network. We want to be able to share what we've learned as we're all learning together. So after you collect the seed, then you say, okay, now what? So we'll go quickly through collecting, cleaning, storing, stratifying, and germinating. Collection, seed is a fruit, so it all ripens at different times. So even with that row of seeds, as the seed collector, I'll monitor it for when it's at its perfect maturity and have to go back through that stand of plants a few times to make sure that I'm collecting each at its ripeness and making sure we're preserving as much of those arcs of diversity as we can. And then cleaning, well, you have to become kind of like a MacGyver and trying to figure out what the best option is for cleaning each type of seed and which sieves and which strainers. We got this really great machine made by a wonderful gentleman out at Wild Garden Seed in Oregon, the Winnow Wizard, which we're working with and learning how to help us clean these seeds more quickly. Seeds are dispersed in a number of different ways. There's all these great ockeries, anemocheries, dispersal by wind, anthropocheries, dispersal by humans, and oftentimes how they're dispersed, kind of those pappuses that you have to rub off of if you think of like dandelion seeds, that's because it's wind dispersed. So then after we clean it, we store it. The general principle amongst seed saving is keeping it cool, dark, and dry. And then as well, I know I'm out of time here, but with stratification, you have to mimic its natural environment. So these native seeds fall into the soils and you have to mimic the snow, freeze, rain that it would go through. So you can do that with moist sand, or another great image from Heather McCargo is simply winter sowing, where you put it right back out on the landscape and let nature do it, just protect it from rodents. I'll put these resources in the chat. And again, if you want to join us and learn more in depth about this, on Friday of this conference from 1 to 4, we'll have our seed school. And like this beautiful chrysalis, you can help support all the wildlife around you. So thank you so much. And I will stop sharing now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. That was wonderful. I learned a lot. So we've got a bit of time left for some questions. Anna, I don't know if you had any that you picked out. I did see one here.
Yes,
Okay.
there are a few that came in, some of which you answered as you were going through, but I'll start off with this, and we do have a few minutes if people want to put a few more questions in the chat. Nate, this one is for you. Both of these. Are there regulations that EFN has to follow in terms of quantity or location of these crops? That's the first one. And then can you talk about seed sales, income distribution, and or other ways EFN internally practices your economic justice values?
Sure. I'm not quite sure what, quite sure if I understand the first question.
The first one was, are there regulations that EFN has to follow in terms of quantity or location of these crops? It could mean some of the crops that you've gotten from places like USDA, or even some of the crops from Syria. Yeah,
there are regulations. When you get seeds from the U.S. government collection, there's a tab that you can click for any restrictions on the seed, and it will take you to a page where there's a list of states where perhaps a particular crop is, a particular seed is considered a noxious weed or something like that. But for the most part, the seeds that are distributed by the USDA are perfectly legal to grow anywhere, especially ones that are crop plants, not wild plants. And that's pretty much, that's the short answer. On the economic model, so the way we do things with our growers is we do a sort of a sliding scale profit sharing. So the lowest percentage of packet price that the grower gets is 20%, and the highest is 50%. 20% would be, say, if we gave someone the stock seed for a pretty commonly available variety and asked them to grow it, and they agreed, and they, agreed to get 20% of every packet sold. And then 50% would be for something that is, say, an ancestral variety that somebody grows, or something that a breeder spent many years developing, or something that somebody introduced that, and they're the only source for it, and it takes a lot of work to produce. That person might get 50%. And so, when we split the packet price, 50% goes to the grower and 50% goes to EFN. In reality, EFN is probably only getting like 10% of that, because we have a lot of expenses for shipping, packing, germination tests, space, all of these things, paying people to do the labor. So that's that's pretty much the basics of how we work. We're doing our best to encourage more people to grow seeds and get more people growing seeds. So, we're really encouraged when someone who starts just growing seed for us is able to grow seed for other companies as well. And that's one of the things I love about this whole industry, the small scale organic seed industry, is that in general, we don't view each other as competition or as enemies. We are all in this together, and our only enemies are the big multinational conglomerate chemical companies like Monsanto and Syngenta and all of these other big companies. So there's, as the pandemic has made abundantly clear, there's a huge demand for seeds out there that's only gotten bigger. And there are just not enough of us out there growing seeds. So the more people we can encourage to do that and make it economically feasible, the better. We love working with small farmers who are producing food and trying to help supplement their income by adding some seeds to the mix. And we're still very small. We've had this is only the, we've been around basically growing seed and selling seed for 3 years at this point. In the last couple of years, it's become clear that we have a real chance to actually make this a sustainable nonprofit and fund all of our work through seed sales.
Okay, thank you for that. And as we get down to our last two questions, this one is for Julia. They're asking you something similar. Can you share more about how TrueLove Seeds business model makes this financial model work?
Yes, thank you, Anna. So similar to how Nate was describing, our profit sharing model is just what it sounds like. It's pretty straightforward. We share 50% of all our seed packet sales across the board with the farmers who grow them, meaning if a customer buys one seed packet for $4, the farmer gets 2 of those dollars. So we connect with farmers, they choose a variety, they grow it out, they send us the seed. We, TrueLove fronts the cost for our annual germination testing of the seeds that everyone grows. We package and sell it, and 4 times a year, we calculate what would be that particular farmer's 50% profit so far, and 4 times a year we send out payments to those farmers. Hope that answers the question.
And I can
go right ahead.
They're very diligent about it. Those checks come on the regular. We put out checks once or twice a year if we're lucky.
All right. Right now, everyone, I don't see any additional questions. I believe you all. Oh, here's one. Someone's asking for the name of that lovely red berried plant in the center. Does anyone know? And I think you answered that, Nate. That's Shazandra.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see any further questions, and we are at the 3:30 mark. So I don't know if you all want to give closing comments, and then we can close out for the afternoon. It was a great, great workshop.
Yeah, if anybody has anything they want to add, feel free. Aaron, I was glad that you mentioned the southern end of things. I always think about us growing things that are at the northern extremes. We do have a couple plants we like to grow, like the bog Labrador tea. We got some of the southern extremes. That's been a fun one.
I know that the ecotype cycle might seem complicated, but these are wild plants that want to grow. So I encourage you all just to have fun and try them out. And I think you'll have success.
Well, everyone, thank you for joining us for such an outstanding workshop. Again, we encourage you to check out the needs assessment on Sunday. Check out the keynote that's happening tonight. Please don't miss that. If you want to contact our presenters, they can get you their contact information. And enjoy the rest of the conference and the rest of the workshops. Be well, everyone, and thank you all so, so much.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Anna. Another good workshop.
Oh, thank you for joining us. So
I
good to
learned
see
too
you again.
much. My brain is still, woo.
I know.
I
You
had
could-
too many questions. I couldn't even figure out which